Clash of Clans podcast, OG, episode 33. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I am your host, Scotty827, joined here live in studio with my beautiful and amazing co-host, TipDog20. How's it going?
Oh,
Is
you're like, what?
that your hog rider?
That's my hog rider impression, although it's pretty bad, isn't it? Let's try it again. You
No,
ready?
yeah, sure.
Oh.
It hits a note in there, and it sounds good actually, but your mic cuts out right at the top of it or something.
Ah, man.
It's almost sounds like they just
It's
capped it
probably
out.
the intensity of
Yeah,
and the mic picks
but
it up and it's
but
like cuts it out.
honestly, I wouldn't have known the difference if you were playing in the sound or not. Like the old thing, the hog rider,
Mm-hmm.
those commercials.
I wonder who they replaced the hog rider voice with, because it used to be Darian, the community manager, and I'm sure they're going to need more MP3 content recordings of a hog rider voice for stuff in the future. So I'm curious, like, are they going to have tryouts for that? Should I try out for the hog rider voice for Clash of Clans?
Yeah, I think you should. I think we should get 2 new characters, like the hog voice, and maybe maybe they just put some podcast hosts, some familiar podcast hosts to the Clash of Clans community. And, I could be the bowler.
I was going to ask you, which voice do you think you would be? Which character? The
You know what? I'll
bowler?
take the bowler.
I don't know that I've ever heard the
I'm calling
bowler
dibs on the
speak.
bowler.
The bowler, I think, has made like grunt noises, like "hoo-hoo-hoo." No, I think that's the giant. "Hoo-hoo-hoo."
Or maybe that would be the giant then. I don't know. But that could work, I guess. Well, so Supercell, again, you got my name, you got my number,
I'll be
you
whatever
got my
voice you want.
email. I think we do a lot of work here on behalf of the listener and the general Clash of Clans community to help come up with amazing ideas and to just generally make your lives better. So,
The least they could do is at least let us
nice
be one
bone.
of the voices of the characters.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, that's not an unreasonable ask. Not at
Yeah,
all.
quite frankly, I'm offended that they haven't asked already.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Done. All
Although
right.
they have been busy doing lots of other stuff recently.
Yeah, how busy?
Super busy, so busy that they put out an event and then had to retract that event. Did you see that?
Well, I've been searching for chests. I don't know. I just didn't find.
So
Did it
they got me
end? I didn't
all
check the
excited.
news.
It was 5 minutes of chess. That's it. Log in, catch it. Oh,
Mm.
yeah.
Eh,
And then it was gone.
And like, if I'm correct, right? And maybe I'm not. That's completely possible too. The as you're like clicking through and you're hitting next, the base with something on it would have like a screen with a dragon.
So they removed the event, and I'm not exactly sure why. I probably could have read up as to why, but my assumption is because it was causing so many apps to crash. So if you hit the hammer for the chest too quickly, then the app would crash. And it would, like, literally you had to smash it with a hammer, wait a couple seconds, smash it for the second time, wait a couple seconds, smash it for the third time, because you smashed it 4 times in order whether to get a common, a rare, an epic, or a legendary. And if you smash the hammer on the chest too quickly, it would just crash the game. And what was pissing players off was they would smash the hammer and then up would come like an epic chest with something amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then the app would crash and it would restart the hammer process and they'd end up with a common. So it's like that was really frustrating. So I'm assuming they have to go back and rework the code a little bit so that way it doesn't crash so much. So I'm assuming that they're putting this chest event off until September, but I think it's
really?
really
You think it's going to
cool.
be that far?
I'm sorry, not September. Now it's September, October. I think they'll probably bring it out either October or November. Although, I mean, they probably have a schedule too. So I don't know. How long do you think that they might postpone this chest event?
Well, I was thinking like a couple days.
You think that quick? They could. I mean, I could be wrong. I just figured they had a timeline. Like they have a timeline of events, and they're like, "Oh crap, this
I don't
chest
know, I
event didn't
guess.
work." And
So
so
I
that
was
they did the mini event, which is cool, but I don't know. Maybe they'll throw in this chest event here in a couple days or a week.
yeah, I was thinking like well, at first when the stuff was going down, I was thinking well, first of all, I didn't know because I didn't read the news tab that it
Mhm.
was taken away. So I was out looking for bases because when you it seemed like when you got to this that there was gonna something was different where this dragon head
Uh-huh.
flame thing came up on a
Right.
base. So I was trying to hit them. They weren't the best. So I best things are and I didn't have my stuff ready and I couldn't find another one. So I kept nexting. So I was just looking around for a long time and then finally I came back and kind of read the chat and I'm like, "Oh, they're gone."
Yeah, for whatever
So
reason.
I was thinking when they said when I see the news, "Hey, this is happening," I'm thinking like it's just like a little bug glitch or like, okay, there's something weird. We're gonna launch it with the mini event,
Right?
or we're gonna launch it with. But overall, it kind of seems like wow. I was surprised, I guess. By
I like the idea. I don't know if you like the idea or not. I mean,
I yeah, it's
it
really cool.
introduces which that's one of the reasons why other games have introduced the chest feature into their games is because it's the gambling effect, where if I spend $1 on a chest, can I get a legendary piece of whatever? So, like in card games, if I
I
buy
always
a
end up with the
legendary chest for
shittiest.
2.99, well, what am I going to get from that legendary chest? Like I could get something that would be amazing for 2.99, or I could get potentially something that's kind of crap for 2.99. But it's that, oh man, like I gotta gamble and hopefully I can get something good that really makes this a genius idea because like I don't gamble, like I don't really care. My wife and I went on a cruise last year, or actually in the spring, and we actually did go down because we were sitting at a table for dinner with family, older family, very
Man,
wealthy,
Legends
who
chests.
they just gambled all the time. Like that's all that they did the whole cruise. They were like, "Yeah,
Oh my
we got our
god.
cruise tickets comped because we spend so much money on gambling. We get free drinks. So we get." I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." They're like, "You should come down, like watch us play." And I never been a gambler, so I went down. And I was like, "Oh, what, $100, $100, okay." And Megan was like, "Yeah, okay, sure." Put it in the little machine, and it was gone in like 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
hundred
I
bucks, just poof.
yeah,
So I don't get the
I
gambling effect, but
well, I mean, I don't I'm very careful with that because I just don't I'm always the person that pulls like the shittiest chests. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna like pull like I'm not gonna win a lottery. You know,
yeah,
I just know that. Um so I just, try to get on other people's tickets. So like, yeah, I'll split it with you if so it's really like taking if I bought me and a friend bought it and said, "Hey, we'll split it."
yeah.
Well, it's really like buying one ticket
So
because
I
I know that I'm not gonna get it. So, but like with this one, I'm, I don't, if the chests are kind of free, they're kind of added on top of stuff and they're not part of the thing,
oh,
then
they'll add a feature where you can buy chests in game. I guarantee it.
yeah. And I did
Eventually.
get a voucher for a free chess thing and opened a couple
Uh-huh.
and I got a book of everything. That was
Nice.
one thing I got. And
But it's
then
only available for 24 hours. Like you
yeah,
had to
that
use it right away.
yeah, you had to use it right away. So I'm sitting here thinking, now I've got 2 books of everything. I'm gonna be
Mhm.
just raking this stuff in, uh, at like 16 hours, and I was having a hard time getting gold at that point.
Right.
And so
Which is what's so genius about it, because these chests will encourage interaction with the game. It will encourage players to play because, for instance, if you get a book of everything, like on one of my chests, I got a book of fighting, and I already had a book of fighting. So I had, I think, 8 days left on my barbarian upgrade on my rushed account. And I was like, well, I mean, I gotta use it, so I just used it on my 8-day upgrade for my
Oh, okay.
barbarians
Yeah.
because I had to get rid of it, right? And
Yeah.
then I had to make sure that I had enough elixir to start another upgrade in the lab at the same time. So if I didn't have enough elixir, well, then I have to be like, well, damn, like I have to use this book of fighting on this upgrade that I'm doing in the lab. And I have to go out and raid, 3 or 4 or maybe less now that loot is so quote unquote easy to get,
Yeah.
but I have to interact with the game more, which is obviously the goal of Supercell starting these chests. It was the goal for hero equipment. It's the goal for the increased loot availability in farming. So all of it is based on interaction, which Supercell is trying to create more of.
And so that brings me to one of the things that we were going to talk about. And so let's just preface this for people listening in the future. It is September. We just had the balance change,
Hmm.
September update, right? The big one. Um, this is probably, I think, a milestone, so a turning point in Clash a little bit. Like this is where, to me, it seems like where it is like the introduction of troops not costing or something. Like the loot difference in the available loot, I
Hmm.
think had like the overall impact to me seems like it's a big change. So we we get the balance update drops, we get out there where all everybody in House of L, the clan is excited about all the we're going out, we're hitting for 1.9 million gold, 1.9. And
Hmm.
I'm like, wow, this is really, really awesome. And then I looked at
Your
my
defensive log.
defenses, and it wasn't bad for me. But then I like, whoa, 1.9 million taken from me?
Hmm.
For some reason, I thought it was like the bonus loot that was coming was going to be the real increase. Like we were just going to be getting that much more and then not having so much taken.
Hmm.
And so when when the excitement starts to wear off and people start looking at their defensive log and it's like, holy shit. Suddenly, Legends League seems to start on fire and people are fleeing the building, jumping out, right? Just right past me, right past Maximus, kicking defensive wins up. To me, this loot change is pretty massive and like kind of game altering, I think. What do you
But I
think
think it's a
about it?
good thing. Like I really like the loot change. Like, yes, so essentially for active players like us, the loot change sucks from a defensive perspective. But if you look at the game as a whole, the majority of players, if you look at those graphs that show where the majority highest percentage of players are at, most players are at Town Hall 13 ish. And at Town Hall 13, that's typically, I mean, they've reduced the timers a lot, but at Town Hall 13, that's when you start to see defenses and buildings go up from costing 1 million in gold to like maybe 4 million in gold or 5 million in gold. And so the player base, what happens to the player who maybe logs in once a day, they do a couple raids and they get 500,000 per raid, which puts, if they had 1 million already, that puts them at 2 million. Well, dang it, they can't upgrade that Inferno Tower. They don't really have anything left to upgrade, so they just log off. Then they log in the next day. They've lost 500,000 in the battle from before, and so they log in again. They do it. So for players like that who aren't as active, this is a massive change and a good one in my opinion, because again, it encourages interaction. So for those players who have 1 million in their storages, they're able to go out and to loot 1.5 million per raid potentially. They do 2 raids of that. That puts them over the 4 or 5 million that they need to upgrade the next building, which means they're going to be more excited about the game because they're actually upgrading once again. They're more active, they're more involved, and although it sucks for us who are super active and keep our storages full in order to upgrade, the reality is for players who aren't as active, it helps the game more overall for everybody because there are more players who are involved with the game, which means more money being spent on the game because you have more players who are interactive with it. Then that means that they're going to spend more because they're more excited about it, which overall, the more money that's spent on the game, Supercell's able
Yeah.
to do more for us. So overall, I think it's a very good thing.
So I couldn't help but look at it and think, okay, this is maybe I'm overthinking this, but didn't it really just make everything cheaper?
In a
Be-
way, it cheapened the cost of the
because
buildings we have to upgrade,
because well, and we'd have to attack a lot less,
right? So
right?
from
To
that perspective, you're right. It reduces activity.
I mean, like the amount of loot that you can get, I can go in and farm way easier.
Hmm.
Um, and I just thought, well, this is a way to kind of shorten the game in a sense. It's like, and maybe like I feel like this is a fundamental shift in like really for whatever's coming down the road. Like it's orienting the game into something where it's like, okay, I don't have to spend so much time farming. Like that's what I see in it. What I'm kind of curious um about, and then what I thought about too, was how does this uh affect inactive players, right? Or how does this affect people in Legend if you've got one hit or 8 hits a day and then you get hit 8 times a day and there's a huge amount of loot involved in the amount you can lose and the amount you can gain.
So I actually got this wrong. I read somewhere that the loot in Legend League was also increasing, and I actually put out a video that said that, and I got the information wrong because in Legend League, the loot amounts did not increase. So I looked recently for Legend League
Ah,
Attack,
I forgot about that part of it too.
it, and it was something like I am able to get like 685,000 of each golden elixir and like 5,000 dark or something when I attack. So that means if I'm in Legend League, I can get considerably less loot than if I drop down to Titans,
Eh,
where this loot increase is in effect. But this also doesn't
Oh,
make any sense to me. Like, I don't understand why they would increase the loot for the lower leagues, but at the highest levels where you're
uh-huh.
supposed to be, quote unquote, best in the game, they left the loot amounts really, really low. To me, it would make sense to increase the loot amounts in Legend League as well, but for whatever reason, they decided not to. So that's probably why we saw an exodus from Legend League is because players were like, "Man, all this loot, I can upgrade my base. I need to finish. I'm not max yet, so I might as well drop so that way I can finish my walls or whatever it might be."
Yeah, and I was thinking to myself, well, I guess I should say I forgot that you can't lose money in Legend. That you
Hmm.
can't lose money in Legend. So, but doesn't it seem though like if this is going to affect like the players, I couldn't help but think that this is like another way of stopping the botting or like the inactive playing, of like people who that you almost have to keep it up because if your base is just sitting there and you're getting hit for these huge amounts over and over again, right?
Hmm.
Wouldn't that like diminish? Like it'd be really hard to just collect, wouldn't it?
I guess. I mean, but also this change was only to the storages, so it wasn't to the collectors. So the amount that we can get from collectors is still the same, but now the amount that can be looted from storages has gone up, which means it's more difficult. Because, for instance, when I farm with sneaky goblins, a lot of times I'll just look for collector raids. in the past. Well, now with this massive loot increase, if I come across a base that has 1.5, 1.5, and 10,000 dark, a lot of times the collectors are empty, which means if I'm going to get all that loot, it's going to be in the storages. So I'm going to break into the
Oh,
base
yeah.
and send my sneaky goblins in, which makes it more difficult from that sense for me to get the loot. So, yeah, I mean, I guess yes and no.
So, like, if you're sitting so, like, one of your accounts, all you do is really collect on it, right?
Hmm.
And you, because 'cause I've got X amount of time for whatever reason. Now I have my account sitting there. I just go in to collect every day. How is it gonna affect that account?
Yeah, so that account's going to be worse off
Because it's
because
gonna get punched and punched and
right.
punched.
Yeah, because if you're just collecting every day and you're not really attacking, then you're essentially, putting moving elixir and gold and dark elixir from your mines and pumps into your storages. Like you're doing that transfer whenever you push the little bubble. And then if you log out after that, and if players are able to get more of that out of the storages that you just transferred to, then it's going to be more of a spin your wheel in the mud kind of a thing for those types of players. But again, I think the goal of this change for Supercell was to boost activity, to boost
Yeah.
players attacking, to get them more into the game from that perspective. I think it's a win, even though it may alienate some players who aren't as into attacking.
Yeah, and I don't really necessarily mean it to say, like, anything bad about that part of it, right? Like, either way, however people wanna play the game, uh, I just see this kind of as part of, like, the larger trend, like, that we talked about before, where bases that aren't played like a regular base
Mhm.
get devalued. So that way there's a less of a pool of high-end accounts. It just seems like to me because now all of a sudden, you know, bases that you would like, maybe just nurse along, it's going to take more effort to even just keep them normal, right? Like keep them balanced. It seems like to me. Like it would be harder to do second accounts and third accounts.
So I thought that it would hurt the botters from the perspective of typically when you bought an account, and I haven't seen this in a long, long time, so I don't know if it's still true, but I was hit by botted accounts back in the day. And literally, the way that you would know that it was a botted account was because you would just have this massive ring of barbarians appear around your base, just bloop, barbarians, and then bloop, archers behind
Oh,
it, and they were basically going for collector raids. Well, now that this loot increase was based on storages, which are typically further inside the base, well, that means botted accounts are going to have more difficulty gaining access to those mounds of loot than they did before. I mean, I
oh,
guess it's going to be the same for them before, but from that perspective, it's definitely excuse me. From that perspective, it's definitely not helping the botters, if that makes sense.
yeah. But wouldn't like wouldn't it be hard too for the player who's playing multiple accounts to keep their bases leveling up? Like,
It
doesn't
could,
it
it depends on their
require
activity level.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kinda what like, it seems like you have to be more active now.
Mhm.
Like,
Which
not just
which again,
encouraging activity, but saying,
you
"Listen,
have to be
you
active
have to be active." Like, this
in
is
order
an
to maintain.
event.
Mhm.
Yeah, because 'cause you're gonna get hit over and over again, which is I mean, I think it's kinda reminds me more of the old days, I guess, where, like, there's a little bit more at stake, when, most of the time that I attacked, in the wild for most of the time I played Clash, I was balancing the cost of the army against how much I was gonna take.
Yeah,
Y
and I remember back in the day too, loot was so precious to our base. I remember looting and then going on a 3-day cruise and actually buying a 3-day shield because the loot was that took all day to get, and I
Yeah.
didn't want anybody to steal that loot, and I wanted it available whenever I came back from the cruise. So I bought that 3-day shield so that way I couldn't get it all taken from me. So that way I would have loot and resources to actually upgrade stuff. Now I think the difference now is that yes, it's easier to get, but that works both ways. So it's easier to get on my side as well. So if I go on a 3-day cruise, I don't care if I'm looted because when I come back, I can essentially refill my storages in 5 or 6 attacks, which will take, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes, right? So from that perspective, like it's not the same as it was before.
Well, yeah. I agree with you. And I and I think eh, I guess it reminds me of it in terms of you could go into a battle in the past and come back in the negative. Like there
Right?
was more of a risk, you know? Like you had to be active. Otherwise, like you said, they're gonna just take your stuff and take your stuff. And so it just kind of seems like without having troops cost anymore, like it puts a little bit more of the risk back into it.
Right. What I thought whenever you said this is a game-changing moment, I thought you were referring to the new map, the new dragon map that they put out that was $32 in game. And the reason that I thought we were thinking that this was a game-changing moment was because when they put that out, Supercell signified, yes, we know that this map is expensive, but we're trying to do a switch from
Old
making
maps.
money making money off of a more powerful base and instead making money off cosmetics. So making money off skins, making money off maps, making money off stuff that looks pretty on your base. And that's a much more sustainable and less meta influencing way to make money. Because hero equipment, for example, the stronger hero equipment you had in the past, then the better you would do, which is kind of the pay to win model. When if you're solely making most of your money off cosmetics, then there's no pay to win model involved, which helps the purity of the game overall. And to me, if they can successfully make that switch and have enough people buy this $32 map, which it's absolutely beautiful, but I'm not going to pay $32
Yeah.
for a map. But if they can
Ouch.
successfully make that switch, then that will again help the game massively because then they're not affecting, how strong an attacker is necessarily based on the skin that's on their king whenever he's attacking versus the type of hero equipment that he's using in that attack.
Y- so I spend a lot of time staring at my map for a long period of time. I don't know
Mhm.
what it is. I put on the treadmill. I'm going to do some attacks. And pretty soon I'm looking at the thing and in 20 minutes have gone by and I haven't done shit. So or I'm reading the chat. And so I was looking at that scenery today. I'd seen I think looked at it one time and I thought, "Oh shit. That's really expensive." Um it's cool looking,
Mhm.
but there is your thing right in the center of this massive piece.
Mhm.
But before the podcast this morning, I was thinking, let me just go take a look at it. And then I just started staring at it. And then I'm like, you know what? Uh I can see myself. Not this one, but there's so much to look at on it that I
Mhm.
could zone out to that. It just would happen. Um it is beautiful and cool, I think.
Right. Right. And I love it. Like I think it's a great idea. I think
Yeah.
it's a good shift if Supercell again can make this shift from making money off of, upgrades and switch it over to cosmetics. I think that's a massive change in a very
I didn't
positive
even
direction
I
for
had
the
not
game.
even considered it when you said that.
And like so as stingy as I am,
You bought it?
no. For
Next
about
coming next episode.
a tenth of a second, I did consider buying it. Because it's so beautiful, because, like, it's so
Did
big,
you
it's
get
very
something
cool.
did you get yourself something for your birthday?
I did not, but my birthday was a while ago. We still got a
Well,
ways to go
you
before my
gotta
next birthday.
well, you gotta make up for your last one.
Although I did like the sci-fi effect as well. They had these, like, little space traveling ships that were shooting. I don't know if you noticed
Oh,
that, and
no.
I was curious if that was gonna be like a future troop or like, I didn't know, but, like so I love the detail, and I would love to have that map to look at, like you said, but again, like, I'm $32, like, that's just a little out of my range, as beautiful as it is.
Treat yourself. Just go
There
for it.
well, if enough people
Live a little,
do,
Pack.
then again, I think this is very positive for the game. Like, I don't consider it a ripoff because I don't have to buy it, but it's available for players to buy. And if Supercell can make enough money in this manner, then again, that's better for me because then that
'Cause they're
means
not
they're
gonna
not going to put so much stock into hero equipment, for example. They're going to be more flexible with the ore because they don't need that source of revenue as badly. If we're all spending money on equipment, people are now spending money on cosmetics. Well, then ore is going to be more available to the economy, which means I'm going to enjoy the game more, which again helps the game overall. Now, they could be greedy and they could say, well, we're going to do a focus on cosmetics and we're going to continue down this path where it
they're gonna
takes 2
run out of
years
shit
to
to
max
do.
out all of your equipment and you have to buy the event passes in order to keep up. Like they could do that, but I don't know. And a lot of that was with the gold pass thing that we talked about that,
Yeah.
the community was in an uproar about. They didn't include the skin. Like I understand
Oh,
why
the
people
warden
were
skin didn't
upset,
get
right?
included, and they
They
got
came back and they included the ward skin and they also
thank
threw in
God.
20 starry ore.
Thank
Like
God.
you could look at this as, well, they had this plan the whole time. They weren't going to include the skin, and then they knew that they were going to put it back in the whole time because they wanted to emit this feeling of goodwill towards the
No way.
community to trick us so that we would just
Mm,
buy even more stuff. Like
no.
I heard stuff like that and I was like, come on. Like
No.
that's a little too
Eh,
conspiracy theory to
let's
me to
let's
make
not
any
piss
sense.
everybody off first, and look
Like,
like
that
we
didn't make any
completely
sense to me.
and maybe look like we flubbed something or
Right.
yeah.
But I'm glad that they admitted, "Hey, we didn't realize that we're trying to make this push over to cosmetics, and we figured and it
See
was the
how
wrong
much we get
decision." Like, let's just be
slapped.
clear. I like the dice better, but it was overall the wrong decision for them not to include the skin in the gold pass because it's been a part of it for so long and it's expected at this point. But from their way of thinking, we're trying to switch over our revenue stream to cosmetics, hence the map. So therefore, we're going to take the skin out of the gold pass and make people pay for it so that we don't have to focus on, you know, limiting the amount of ore that players can get. We can be a little more flexible with that and not make as much money off of hero equipment and hero upgrades and books of heroes because we have this alternate revenue stream, which is cosmetics. So I understand their thinking. And I'm also glad that they recognized their error and they added it back into the game because it's so important to so many players.
And quickly.
Right.
That it was added back, like, right away, I think
Right.
was, um I just would like to see those skins, like, let's let them transfer to our pets at least. If you've got a king
Hmm.
with this, let's let it go to our pet too, Let's move that down. Thank you,
Imagine it's on the drawing board,
Supercell.
pet skins. Like I can
Yeah,
totally imagine
but if you
again because
you
it's
put your
focused on
kings on
cosmetics.
yeah. I didn't really think about that as, like, the kinda seeing that move, and we talked about the skin before, but to see it, like, kinda come to be, it makes me excited to see what might be next, though. Like, what other possible, um, village skins. Is there any that
Right.
you would buy? Well, Star Trek for
I
sure.
mean, yeah. I mean, if it had like a sci-fi theme to it,
Yeah.
like maybe Stargate, Star Trek, Star Wars, kind of homage theme, like $32. Oh, man, like that's a lot. I
Christmas is
might.
coming.
I might bite. Like seriously, I might bite. I don't know. I would have to look at it and I'd have to really think about it. It's a core tenet of mine. Like my wife knows. Like I'm very cheap. I
It
it's so funny because I have a pair of Clarks of dress shoes that I bought in 2013 and I'm
Oh.
still wearing them and I wear them almost every day. I switch back and forth between my black dress shoes and my brown dress shoes and literally there's almost a hole in the bottom. Like they've worn through completely so much. And the other day she
It's
went
gonna
to the store and she's asked, "Can you please just buy a new pair of shoes?" I'm like, "No, I polished them. Like they still look good up top."
They're gonna
Clark's has supported this podcast. They're sponsoring this podcast, but they still look great. I polish them often, keep them shiny, like all that. But the sole, like the
but your
bottom,
socks are dirty.
yeah. And she's
Warping the
like, "Can I
floor.
please just buy you a freaking pair of shoes?" I'm like, "No, like these are fine. Like I could wear them." So the other day, you know what she did? Went to the store. There was a sale on Clark's, $55 for the exact same pair that I'm wearing, out an updated version 11 years later.
Yeah.
And she just brought them home. She's like, "I don't care what you say. You're gonna have a new pair of shoes."
Happy birthday.
But that's how I am. Like I just
Yeah.
don't like spending money. So
It'll yeah. Well, no, it's costing us more in holes in the socks for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I still think that price is a little high. I think like a 19.99 is a little bit better. Maybe 24.99.
I think
But
24.99 is probably where it needs to be at. And we discussed this last week, right? 24.99 is kind of where feel
yeah,
where, "Oh, man,
I
that's
agree with you.
awesome. 25 bucks. Ah, that hurts." But okay. I don't get where they got the 32.99 number from. Like that just seems so random to me. Why not 29.99,
Yeah,
or 34.99? Like to me, the differentials of 5 would make a lot more sense. I think they would have the same number of players who bought it at 34.99 as at 32.99. So I don't get it. I don't know
yeah,
why they did that number, but whatever.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I'm thinking. I think
Yeah.
something's gonna be. This kind. It just seems like for some reason around all of this right now, like, and maybe it has to do with like upcoming town hall. It just feels like there's something in the air. There's a shift, and one of those things that I'm interested in hearing from your perspective on now is the supercharged.
Mm.
Because Maximus kind of said to me something to the effect of it seems like a an intermediate step towards the next town hall level. Like, oh, we don't have it ready yet, but here's something.
So I found it interesting that they decided to supercharge rather than just adding a level to these buildings. So to me, like if the meta is such to where you need to quote unquote supercharge a defense, well, why not just upgrade it to the next level? Why not take your Inferno Towers from level 10 to level 11 rather than leaving them at level 10 and supercharging it, unless whenever Town Hall
Unless,
17 comes out, they want the meta at Town Hall 16 to be easier. So for players again who are coming up, because whenever Town Hall 17 comes out, that supercharge for Town Hall 16 goes away, which essentially means however difficult Town Hall 16 is with supercharged defenses, it will be that much less difficult once Town Hall 17 comes out for Town Hall 16 players.
and do you
So
think that they're gonna take away the supercharge then at 16?
they will, but not until Town Hall 17 comes out. So to me, this move signifies that they're looking forward to the future meta of Town Hall 16. So, like, if you look at each town
Oh,
hall and how easy it is, for instance, Town Hall 11 is ridiculously easy with Sap Witch. Town Hall 12, a little bit harder, but still pretty easy. 13 for right, you get harder as you go up. Well, the complaints are that Town Hall 16 is not hard enough, so they introduced supercharging in order to make it hard now. But then once Town Hall 17 and new levels for those defenses are introduced, supercharging goes away for Town Hall 16, which means it automatically becomes easier for anybody who's at that Town Hall 16 level. Then that's the only thing that makes sense rather than adding a new level to the defense is that they're looking forward and not wanting the Town Hall 16 meta to be too hard in a year or two whenever we have Town Hall 17 or Town Hall 18.
okay. I think I might have read it wrong.
Well, and
I,
I
I
I originally thought that it was only like 3 buildings, and I also thought like you had to choose which buildings to supercharge, And then the moment the update came out, I looked on my game over my iPad, and I had all these options for supercharge. It's like 15 buildings that you can supercharge. It's like uh,
Really?
battle builders and inferno towers and scatter shots and Teslas.
And
Like
it just
all,
makes them more strong?
it just adds DPS to them. So also interesting though, they decided not to allow supercharging to the monolith or the eagle, which I'm guessing because they did the testing. And if the
This
eagle was supercharged, those eagle blasts, for
this
example, would just do too much damage and make the meta just too difficult. And the same with the monolith.
okay.
Because I mean, the assumption was that in order to stop the heroes from being so powerful with their hero equipment, well, one answer that you could provide to that is by adding an extra level to the monolith. I mean, with a stronger monolith, like the monolith is quote unquote the hero destroyer with like how it's set up. But instead of adding a level to the monolith or any of the other defenses in the game, they just decided to supercharge. I like the idea. Um, it's just it's an interesting way to implement it. I think that they could have just added an extra
I
level to the game.
uh
But so for instance, Town Hall 15. Town Hall 15 was extremely difficult whenever Town Hall 15 was the max. Now that we're in Town Hall 16, sure, Town Hall 15 is hard. Like I have a Town Hall 15 right now. It's not even close to as difficult as it
mm,
was back when Town Hall 15 was max. So from that perspective, like Town Hall 16 is gonna be easier, even if they added an extra level. I don't understand why they just didn't add levels rather than supercharging, but they have their reasons, I guess.
yeah, and I don't know why I was thinking that, like, hey, the next update comes out or the next thing comes out, and then the supercharge just goes away, and then you
Yep.
redo it. Like,
Um,
this is
yeah,
a like, there's a kinda like a season to it or something, like, you can only recharge it once every, you know, I don't know, but I didn't realize, like, that going away kinda was, like, going
permanent.
away. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't connect those 2 things.
I'm assuming that they're kind of using it like a tool in their tool belt. So they will look at the meta at Town Hall 17, and none of the buildings will be supercharged. At Town Hall 17, they'll probably
Oh,
introduce a new troop, maybe a new spell, and they'll see like how difficult or how easy is the meta at Town Hall 17. And if it's a little on the easy side again, well, then they may be like, well, let's bring back supercharging because that's an easy way to add balancing to an quote unquote easy meta in a way that won't influence town halls in the into the future whenever we have players going through those town halls.
and does this affect hard mode?
So supercharging is in hard mode, but hard mode was changed, and this is really interesting. Initially, they just put in just flat numbers, 5, 10, 15% to defensive DPS and
Hard
hero
mode
damage and
2.
hero HP. So they brought out hard mode 2, which directly affected the hero equipment. And Nico actually commented on this last week, where this is not in his opinion and also in my opinion, I don't know that this is the best way to implement hard mode because it fundamentally changes the types of attacks that pro players using hard mode will use in comparison to the casual player, which makes up the majority of the player base. So, what hard mode 2 does is
Oh.
it nerfs hero equipment directly. So, any epic equipment like the fireball or the gauntlet or the frozen arrow, the max level allowed in hard mode now is 21. So, for example, I've been
Yeah.
using the fireball a lot in my attacks, and at 27, it does a specific amount of damage so that I just have to use a quake and I can get rid of a ton of buildings, and that's
Oh.
super efficient for me. Well, at level 21, like the fireball does so much less damage, which means we're not likely to see the fireball in Clash Worlds or in professional matches if it's limited to 21 because it's not going to do the same thing as it does outside of hard mode.
You
So
know
therefore, we're going to see lots of like queen charges and Lalo based attacks and these complex attacks, which I guess is interesting to watch. but they're totally different and completely separated from the equipment that we're using on an everyday basis. So will that
Yeah.
alienate us from wanting to watch and wanting to interact with this professional scene that is playing using hard mode?
It's kinda like Supercell's way of saying, "Hey, shut the hell up. This is what you asked for."
It
You know,
is.
to say like, "Hey, we understand that the hero equipment has this many levels. We have to introduce it, and we wanna introduce it. Here's one way to say, for these competitions, one way to kinda even the playing field, at least to say, this is a reasonable amount to level up in probably a certain amount of time period, you know?"
Well, I think it comes back to how important is ESL within Clash of Clans? Like the fact that Clash of Clans has the Clash Worlds, which, as Nico commented last week, has been declining in viewership. How important is it for the professional scene with Clash of Clans going to be for the casual majority player base that Supercell is catering to? Like, will they come to a point where they say, we're not going to host professional esports anymore? Now, the community can do it on their own, and as Nico, I love referring to Nico so much, but as Nico said last week, like all of these community run ESL events, they all have different ways of nerfing players' attacks. So one
Yeah.
player may say, so one example is in this tournament, no epic pieces of equipment can be used, period. You only have to use common equipment with all of your attacks. Well, that's one
Y
way of nerfing the meta for that specific tournament to make it more difficult. Another tournament may say no root riders
yeah.
in this tournament. Like the community can decide how they want to nerf their tournaments in order to make it as viewer friendly and as enjoyable to watch as possible. And if they do that as a casual player, I'm watching these, community run esports matches and I can look at their attacks and I can mimic their attacks essentially because for instance if epic equipment is banned from this specific tournament, well I can still do their attack with my common equipment because nothing else has been banned. So
Yeah.
I don't know, it comes down to whether or not esports is really important for the longevity of Clash of Clans. I don't know, what do you think?
Well, I think that, like, where I'm kinda seeing the f well, I'm not seeing the effect, but here well, I think, like, having that level capped at 21 says, "Okay, you don't have to max your equipment to play in the pro
Oh, that's true.
sports things,"
I didn't
right?
even think about that.
That, like, okay, yeah, we're gonna put the levels on them like we wanna do it, but you don't have to get them all the way up, and here's probably a reasonable time period. And it probably also, I guess maybe I don't know what if it affects like the town hall level, but you can now just go, hey, if I'm going to do tournaments or if I want to get involved in this stuff, all I have to do is get them across the board to 21. I have full access to my arsenal, to
Yes.
whatever piece of equipment.
And same with common. Like common will be maxed out at 15. Like they're
Yeah.
only common equipment at 15 and only epic equipment at 21, which means if I want access to the entire arsenal of hero equipment and I want to play professionally or at ESL level in hard mode, well, then I essentially only have to get all my equipment to 15 and all my epic equipment to 21,
Yeah.
which it's a lot easier to get epic equipment to 21 because those last six levels are massive when it comes to
Yeah.
ore. So I mean that's an excellent point, which makes it more friendly again to the overall player base so that they can get involved with these esports matches.
Yeah, and they're probably gonna see it, and I don't know on if the cap changes at, different town hall levels on hard mode. Like, your the equipment level to whatever level, like,
Mm.
I don't know if that is
I don't
affected,
know either,
but
but I
I
also know that most esports is at Town Hall 16, whatever the
oh,
max Town
okay.
Hall is. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that's a good point, but,
'cause then something
also
comes
the
out and
majority.
it's not seen like, "Hey, here's a cash grab." Yeah,
Mhm.
maybe, like, they're still gonna see it, but I'd imagine it would take, like, a month or less to max or to get a piece of equipment to 21.
Could be, yeah, if you focused on it, you could do it in a
Y
month for
Yeah, you
sure.
just do it, like and when by the time an event gets done, I'm usually at if a piece of equipment comes out, I'm usually at 14 or 15 by the end of that week anyways.
Right?
So it's like, okay, we can introduce this. And I think one thing that, you know, that we talk about, and I hear people talk about too, about like the equipment coming out so fast. It just reminds me a lot of like the Dark Elixir troops. That like they get introduced right away, levels, get put on there. But I think
Mhm.
like the experience of, let's say, somebody starting the game, when you have those level caps, like for me, I was gonna take my rocket spear to 27, like max it out. I didn't
Mhm.
realize it capped out at 24 at Town Hall 15.
Yep.
Um, and so then it forces me into a different track. And so I think for people who are, later town halls, um, we're a little maybe got a little overwhelmed with it, but people coming up are going to have that different experience.
Yeah, no, and I
You know what I
agree,
mean?
like, that I never looked at it from this perspective, like, from that perspective, the professionals who have complained that they have to spend so much money to get this max equipment, well, this is kind of a response to that with, "Look, all you have to do is get your equipment to 21. That doesn't take a lot of effort to
Yeah.
get there. Your common equipment only has to be at 15." So, if we introduce, for example, new equipment on different heroes within the next month, and Clash Worlds is in, I think, November, and you're gonna complain, "Well, if I wanna use this new piece of equipment, I'm gonna have to spend hundreds of dollars in order to max it out before Worlds." And Supercell's hold on, hang on, we're using hard mode in Worlds, so technically you only have to get your equipment to 21, which means this is not a cash grab. We're
Yeah.
trying to give you something that's reachable in the 2 or 3 months time that you have before Worlds is introduced.
Yeah. Well, way to just knock that one out of the park. Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You put it so eloquently. I was
No,
not like that
that's
in my head.
yeah. And I like I said, I read people who are a little more conspiracy theorist, like about the skin, or like, "Oh, Supercell didn't put it in there because they knew they were gonna put it back, so that way they would foster goodwill within the community." And like I want to think the best of everyone, and honestly, of all the gaming companies out there, like I play Hearthstone, which is a Blizzard company, and Blizzard, of course, does World of Warcraft. They have instituted some game changes that have definitely been an attempt to rip off their player base, like very clearly rip off. Now they've gotten better, they made some changes, but I have never seen one decision made by Supercell where it's just completely clearly we're trying to rip you off 100%. Now, there may have been a little bit of we're trying to make as much money off you as possible, but never to the point, in my opinion, of we're just trying to rip you off.
Yeah.
So I want to think as positively as possible about Supercell because they've never really given me a reason to think any differently, and hopefully that continues. And I think that
Yeah.
this hard mode change is a move in the right direction, as you pointed out, from a perspective that I never even thought of.
Yeah. It seems like just a big overall, it's just been some huge changes. I mean, we have snacks too.
Snacks.
Um, the
Which they
balance
come out with great
changes.
ideas, right? Balanced,
Yeah.
like, easier to farm, like, they're making it more friendly for everybody, which the snacks is a genius idea because, you get them, out of chests, you have to use them within 24 hours, and they do some amazing stuff, like, they give you unlimited clan capital troops for 12 hours, you get immediate trained armies for 20 minutes or 10 attacks. You get builders sped up by 2 times for an hour. Like some of these are literally they're not going to make any money off of them. Although, I mean, as we talked in the beginning of the episode, down the road they will probably be selling packs of chests later on, so they
Yeah.
will make money from that perspective. But
It's
from
just
just the
something
free
fun to
chests you
add
get in
in.
game, like it's a cool thing that they're not making any money off of that helps the player experience be massively better.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be so much better for me. I get ready for my, 8-hit in Legend League and asking for CC troops, although House of L is great about donating CC troops. I'm typically filled within 5 or 10 minutes. well, it's gonna be great to just be able to run through all 8 of my attacks and not have to ask or burden anybody in my clan for CC troops. Like, that's just a massive quality of life improvement in the player experience that they're
Yeah.
not making any money off of, at least currently.
It it's just not another update. This is
Mhm.
like, to me, will shift things the game in ways. Like, I think this is bigger than we're seeing and in line for the next thing. That's
Well, and also I was thinking, and I'm curious your perspective on this. I love competition. So, I love, we've talked about business in the past, and competition is always good for business. And there are games that are coming out, for example, Age of Empires 2, which I've talked about, that might be a direct competitor with Clash of Clans. And so Clash of Clans is seeing these games that come out, and they're like, we have to make the experience better for our player base so that they don't leave in mass droves and start playing these other games that are available that might be just as good or even better than our game. So I love the competition, and I think that the competition keeps them honest. Because if it got to the point to where they're really trying to rip off and take advantage of the player base, and enough of the player base felt that way,
yeah.
well, then there's other really good games that players can go to, and Supercell would lose money in that sense, if they have players that just massively leave Clash of Clans and start playing Age of Empires 2, well, then they're losing lots of money because of that. So they have to give us the best player experience possible without making us feel like we're being ripped off. And I kind of feel like they're doing a decent job at that. I don't know about you.
I hands down feel like I feel like I'm having a really good player experience.
Yeah.
I always think it's a little I always feel bad, to be honest, when, like, the update comes out and it's like, bam, something happens or things don't go how it goes. I'm like, I do feel like, hey, they are trying their best, you know. Well,
Hmm.
okay, wait, I guess how I should say that is, I feel like they're really trying to get it right, and it sucks when things just don't do that,
Hmm.
and I don't feel any, like, animosity about it or anything. I feel like they're trying to uh make it fun and keep the spirit, keep the community. It's just so hard to balance all those things together,
It is.
and
Right.
sure, you got corporate stuff over top of you, um, as well, so it's just like, you know what? Here's the thing, I'm rooting for them, I'm rooting for the
Same.
game, I'm rooting for things to go good, and so, I guess maybe that's how I feel about it when things are going wrong. I'm just like, "Alright, keep going,"
Yep.
just,
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
kinda
And I'm the
wanna be
same.
like, yeah,
Yeah, and I'm rooting for them to get the balance right between making revenue and also giving us a massively amazing player experience. And it all goes down to that long-term goal. Like, are we creating a game? Like I mentioned Heroes of Mavia before, which was, I mean, very clearly Clash of Clans ripoff, right? It was Clash of Clans and it was an amazing game. But also the developers were very clearly, in my opinion, focused on making as much money as quickly as possible off of the player base.
yeah,
So, is it that long-term goal of creating as much revenue over time, or are we trying to make as much money off of players right now in this moment within the next 365 days as possible, which is essentially is going to alienate a large portion of your player base. I mean, I was looking in the App Store the other day, and Clash of Clans out of 5 stars has 4.8 stars.
yeah,
Like, that's massive. So I think overall, even though we hear complaints from the fringes, and when they do get something wrong, like the skin in the gold pass, for example, the reason that they have 4.8 stars is because the majority of players feel like maybe they are
that's
able to complain.
there's many trolls out there, that's
Yeah,
pretty
tell me
amazing.
about it. Although I haven't had many on my YouTube videos
Yeah,
recently. I had a rash of them on a few videos that I put out.
better get
Um,
some cream for that.
well, they all got banned, and then
For
I
your
haven't
rash,
had
I
any
mean,
since.
for your rash.
So it's good. I haven't seen many trolls on any of my videos recently, which is great.
Yeah. Well, if it was me, my goal as Supercell right now would probably be, uh, the record. and to defy probably any expectation. You were there at the beginning of the App
Mhm.
Store. You have been there the whole time through the App Store. I would imagine my if it was me, my company, I would say I want this to be chess that evolves and is around a community.
I
That's
think it has the potential to do that.
yeah, that's people can know it, rely on it. You can put your money into it and realize like down the road you can come back to it. You can, you know what I mean? Just
Mhm.
you get value in a lot of ways. Um,
Which I'm curious about your
so
player
if you're hiring
experience.
Supercell, I'd be happy to do
Scotty
some
827's
yeah.
available.
Yep.
Uh, I'm
Available for hire.
curious because the meta did get harder a little bit. Now, granted,
Yeah.
most of that meta changing decisions that Supercell made in nerfing certain things, nerfing equipment, nerfing certain troops, adding supercharging, like all of that. Have you noticed a difference? Because I have, for
The
example.
hogs
So
on the hog puppet.
right, the hogs,
Yes.
level 11 versus level 13, like, all of that. Like, what has been your experience, and what is your opinion on Supercell making things harder for players? Do you think that's better for the overall player base, or do you think it should be a little bit
I
easier?
Well, first of all, I'm just gonna say that I'm like Neo in the Matrix when the bullet is whizzing past on this one.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've seen these bullets go by. I mean, I have to go into fast mode and do some maneuvering, right? But
Mhm.
um people want it harder. It just got harder. I think
Yeah.
like I as much as it's like, oh God, here we go with this update, it's one of those that's like things are changing, right? Like, who we went into war post CWL. I lost my first attack because which should have been an easy attack, I thought, because of I felt like the changes I was it was doing things like how I was doing.
Mhm.
And it went through the clan too. It was like, holy crap, this just doesn't quite get it. I'd see a couple, I'd watch an attack and I'd be like, man, I bet you that Inferno Tower would have went down before the nerf. Uh, and I'm happy to see that. Like everybody's kind of going back to the drawing board. It kind of sucks, but it makes it pretty interesting.
So, I'm seeing a big change, interestingly enough, in base building. So a lot of the previous meta bases were very anti root rider, and to be anti root rider, there were more clusters of defenses,
Yeah,
so that
I
the
like that.
defenses would just overpower the root riders, at least attempt to, in order to take them out. And those clusters of defenses were susceptible to the fireball on the warden. And so now that the meta has changed, I'm doing my Legend League attacks and I'm noticing the bases are changing as well. So the bases that I'm coming across, there are no real good fireball spots for me. And so a lot of my attacks now are ending in like 95%, 96%, because I'm just not quite able to get over the hump. But one reason why I really like this meta change, even though I'm not three starring as much as I was before. So before the nerf, like I was probably three starring 6 out of 8 times in Legend League. And I was
Uh-huh.
getting three starred 7 of 8 times at least in Legend League. Well, now I'm getting three starred maybe I was. So I actually was able to get up pretty high, but I was getting three-starred maybe 3 times out of the 8, like at
Wow.
5,400 cups. I moved up, and a couple days ago, I reached like 5,800 cups, and I noticed players as I'm watching their attacks, I'm learning stuff from their attacks again. So I'm watching these attacks, and it's not just spamming root riders, throwing in your
Oh,
king here and there, your queen. It's very specific, organized attacks where the player's looking at the base that I'm presenting
well, that's
and
cool.
they're deciding to take out certain sections. So which is what I want. I don't mind being three
More
starred
like a
by a good
war
attacker.
attack.
Right, exactly. More like a war attack in Legends. So, and even though I'm not three starring as much, so I think yesterday I got 4 out of 8 3 stars. but I'm enjoying it more because I'm noticing these attacks where I'm getting like 95%. I'm rewatching those attacks. I'm like, man, if I had held off on the rage just a little bit longer, or if I had
Yeah.
envisaged my troops right here versus back here, I
Yeah.
would have three-starred that. So I'm able to learn again from my attacks versus just throwing my troops down and, throwing down my spells here and there with a little bit
Yeah.
of strategy. But now I'm having to go back to the drawing board, like you said, look at my attacks to see, okay, I need to improve this, this, and this. And that interaction is what makes the game fun for me. That's
Yeah.
what improves my experience overall.
Yeah, like, all of a sudden, I'm hitting bases, and I'm having to, like, dial in more. Like,
Mhm.
it's not just it's even just small little things like, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna hit it from here," because all of a sudden, I'm not pulling out the wind so easy, you know? I switched
Right.
out, heal spell or a rage spell for a heal to kinda counter the poison, that I'm running up against in the core
Mhm.
all the time, uh, and also also to help the hog puppet, which is a huge piece, like, I
Right.
think. So taking
Yep.
the hogs from level 11 on the hog puppet to level 9, those giant bombs do some damage.
Yep.
And that poison does some damage, so that helps with my super bowlers and the, stuff. I also have to release the RC more towards a cluster
Mhm.
because where I can keep him out of or keep her out of, the any giant bombs and stuff, so but I love the rocket spear. That's kinda doing some damage, so, um
But it's these changes, like, right? So it's these
yeah.
minor changes where, oh man, I can use the exact same army that I've been using because of 3 stars every single time. Well, now that's not happening. And so I have to go back and I have to do FCs. Like I have to interact with the clan more. I
Yep.
have to look at my attacks. Like it's more fun for you and for me overall when we're not 3 starring so easily. So I don't mind
Yeah.
having a 20% hit rate necessarily because it means that I'm going to push myself to improve, to get better, to look at what army strategies work better with the current base layout and on all of that rather than just
Yeah.
defaulting to the spam army. I realize that,
And, like,
that
spell timing. I mean, that
yes,
seems to have
exactly.
real and tome timing just seems to everything has to be more focused, it seems like, to
Yep,
me.
and it makes a 3 star more special too. Like if you I and that was my big complaint was if I looked at a player who attacked my base in war and literally they were all over the place with little obvious little skill. They just kind of threw their troops down. Those 3 stars felt bad.
Yeah.
But now if I'm 3 starred, like in the war that we're in now, I watch the 3 star. I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Like they actually took the time and they had the skill and they 3 star my base. So in that sense, I'm like, great job. Like that I don't mind being 3 starred that way. It was just when I was 3 starred in a haphazard way that felt bad for me.
Yeah, and here's an example too, right, with that. This war that we're in, right now, we're up against a clan that is 100% across the board,
Mhm.
like the last few wars. Uh, all of a sudden, I'm thinking like and of course, they're probably gonna 100% again, but we're
Mhm.
seeing things like last night, uh, our number 1, Ah Hell, he had 2 hits against him for 1 star,
Yep.
and
That would have happened before. That would not have happened,
that
right?
wouldn't have happened before, no.
Correct.
I mean, at least they would have pulled out a 2 star,
Mhm.
but to have 2 hits, I mean, you just seeing the changes, minor and a couple hits here and there that get absorbed, I'm defending more and better in the wild,
Mhm.
uh, about the same in war, I think, but all those things will, I think, overall change that map too, hopefully. I mean, I know they're still gonna be o smashing hard, but there's something.
Yep.
Something it's gonna be interesting to see for sure.
Agreed.
So, do you wanna talk a couple songs right now before we have to wrap up here?
Oh, my dogs just went crazy. Somebody must have came to the door. That's so funny. Let's just be honest. The best song that was presented for us was the most
Oh,
recent one by GCBC.
yeah. That
Which what was the name of
this
it? 433. Do we want to
it
play
was
that for the listening audience?
I think we might violate copyright if we do that. So the song posted by RC uh GCBC, and he says, now that the root spam is pants, I have a different suggestion uh for your attack music. And the song is 433, artist is Johnny Cage, but it's like 4 minutes and 33 seconds, artist Johnny Cage. That was a GCBC song for me, and for Tip, it was the death metal cover. And I don't know how to
it it was nothing.
it's nothing.
It's nothing. They just stood there the whole time.
The whole
I was
time.
I opened it up and I was expecting this like death metal jam, like da 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 da. And I'm
I'm
waiting,
I'm checking
and
my
I'm
sound.
waiting, and I'm waiting. I'm like,
My iPad's broken.
what? And then finally, after like a minute, I like fast forwarded the video. I'm like, oh, I got to get to the music part. I'm like
Yeah.
fast forwarding, and I stopped it and I watched. They're just still standing there, nothing. Fast forward a little bit more, nothing. Fast forward a little bit more, nothing. I'm like, oh, I get it now. It's a song of nothing. That's our new theme song. I love it. That was hilarious. Gave me a good laugh.
Oh, this one. This one is yours for me. We'll uh let's come back to that one. Uh
Mine was amazing for you.
yeah. Um I'll try to get some listeners because we have a few more besides this. Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Awesome Pie Guy suggested it for me. This song fits with you mentioning on the podcast about how Tip's troop die valiantly, but yours don't. Um, in fact, I listened to it. I really liked it. It's just I didn't know about that one. I think like the walk away. Like if it goes bad or if it goes good. I don't know if I'd feel like more shame, I think, if it goes bad at the end. Okay, for Tip by Chewy, Sabotage by the Beastie Boys.
Hmm.
As a Trekkie, he says, I'm gonna guess you are familiar with this. It's also 3 minutes long.
Yep. So that was in the last of the Kelvin timeline movies, where uh,
Oh yeah,
if you've
at the
ever seen it, like
beginning.
they play that song to destroy all the bots. Yeah,
And right at the beginning of the movie, right?
yeah.
Of Star
No,
Trek.
it was towards the end, and then Captain Kirk, Chris Pine was like, "Good choice," and they just go through and they destroy all this stuff. Like it was classic. It was good.
Cool.
Definitely a good choice for me.
And Chewy also suggested for me Holding Out for a Hero by Bonnie Tyler. I need a hero. First one's obvious for an 80s guy. You know what? I'm almost positive this used to be my war song. It's fantastic. And if I remember correct, that was one of the problem. If you failed before that song was over and she's screaming, I need a hero. I need and there I am with the dead bass. It's just like your face gets rubbed right in it. I'll come back to that. And we could do one. Let's do one more for "Bat Out of Hell" by Meatloaf. Oh, that one's for me from Chewy.
Hmm.
I like that one. Actually, I thought it was or wasn't Bat. Was it "Bat Out of Hell"? I thought it was "I'll Do Anything for Love," but maybe I think I might have misread the our album cover. And Tip's song for me was "I'm a Motherfucking Beast."
I'm a motherfucking beast. That's
I was
you.
a little nervous when the update dropped, uh, about
Got 20
what
stars in CWL.
yeah, I did alright,
Yep,
but
did all right. Did all right.
it was
Did
very
all right.
stressful. It was very stressful. attack. I realize I just have to attack at the start of war. Otherwise, I look at the base all day. And then I go in to hit it, and I just decide, nope, I'm gonna go to the other one, fresh thinking, and then I do well. So just get it out
Yep.
the way.
Perfect song for Scotty 827.
Shout outs this week.
Oh, you know what? I didn't even think of any. I don't have any off the top of my head. Shout out to everybody in the clan. I have a great time talking with everybody. We've had some great conversations. So thank you. I need to get names specifically so that I can shout people out.
Yeah, I'm gonna shout out. There's a lot of shout outs. I think we're gonna have to do a shout out episode. Have done those in the past, and we'll just have to do like a big shout out. We're gonna finish
Hmm.
up the songs. Can keep the songs coming. There's some really good ones that I think I've just wrote down. So I'll pull the rest of those. I looked up. I can't play the clips. I'm afraid I'm just gonna get flagged on YouTube, and there's supposedly a rule, not kind of a rule. I want to give a shout out because we still have to do like a CWL breakdown. I want to give a shout out, a big shout out to everybody in Angry Wookiees who we
Oh,
didn't
that's
really
right.
get
We
to talk
promoted.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that was huge because we literally had like Town Hall 12s and Town Hall 13s, and we were going up against 14s, 15s, and 16s. And
And
we got first. Like literally, like we
holy
basically
shit.
were two-starring everything, and then we were able to get, Chewy does a great job at organizing that, where he will hit a lot of the higher bases with sneaky goblins to two-star them, and then all of our higher bases will hit down in order to three-star, like the lower half of the map, and
Oh,
it
cool.
happened to work out really well.
That's awesome. I want to
Yep.
hear about that. And like when everybody came back, it was like right in the beginning of the week and everybody was busy, I'm sure. So I didn't get to hear about everything,
Mhm.
but everybody over there did awesome. They won. Uh, thanks for everybody for participating and who all went there. Um, thank you to House of L for bearing with me on the first CWL.
You did a great job.
I was terrified I was gonna push the wrong button at one point through the whole week, so it was a little stressful, but now I've seen it, been through it, uh, and I wanna shout out, the Elite Osix Pact, uh, and I'm probably saying his name wrong, probably Aussie Expat, but I was called Osix Pat,
Yep.
and, Param
Yep.
during
Amazing.
CWL, and there are many others, but these TH14, the Elite, TH13s
Yeah.
just
Fram had a
had
13 versus 15 3-star.
yeah,
That was amazing.
and they were hitting really awesome on 16s, and they were
Mhm.
just overmatched, but, like, pulled not just pulled their weight, I thought, but, like, "Who the hell are you? And where the hell did you come from?" Not like they're not good, nor but it was like they got thrown into the fire, and they are just coming out dragons or something. It was
Yep, that's
just the
House of L, baby.
craziest thing to see. It was just
Badass to the core.
yeah, I was, like, pumped up, like, it was fun. So, shout out to those guys, and, we'll download some more stuff. All these things come up. I still wanna talk about the Nico interview. I know for sure I have been working completely on traps for the last 2 weeks, and especially my giant bombs because of the update. And I think that's having an effect. So I want to
Mhm.
get into all that too. So get a hold of us, clashclanspodcast@gmail.com. You can call or text 320-216-2073. That's 320-216-2073. You can follow Tip on YouTube at Clash Tips, right? Just search for that, or you can find his
Mhm.
stuff on our website. Other than that, I can't wait to be back because now I'm already thinking of things for the next list, and talk about all this. So until
Excited to
next
talk about it.
time, keep it clashy, everybody.
Keep it clashy.
Skilly beep boop, skilly beep.